dwelling units and give us some guidelines on the regulations and everything else comes around with ADUs and that kind of thing. So with that, Sam, we want to give you whatever time you need to present this information and yeah.
This before you start.
Yeah, the remote's right there, and
Where do you like me to stand or sit?
Just right here by the microphone, probably. Or if you want to stand, you can turn this one off. Would you rather?
I'll sit. That's fine.
we appreciate Sam for his guidance and help with all of the issues, and you work closely with the Planning Commission, and yeah, we appreciate you very much. We'll let you go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you for having me tonight. Sean asked me to share a bit with you about the ADU ordinance that we've been working on over the last few months with the Planning Commission. I'm just going to give a background of what this is all about, why we're doing it, and kind of an overview of our process and where we're at today. So accessory dwelling units, some of you are probably familiar with them, maybe all of you. They're really a growing trend nationally, as well as here in the state, for a few different reasons, but they're adding to the housing supply. I wouldn't say they're a silver bullet to our housing problems, right? But they are a piece of this affordable housing issue, and that's a big part of why the state is interested in promoting them. As part of that, the state has enacted certain requirements related to ADUs. Particularly, they have deregulated internal ADUs to the home. So those basement mother-in-law apartments that everyone had, secretly already, they're now permitted. And so it sort of has necessitated the need to get a little bit more of an ordinance around these with that state requirement coming down. There are different types of ADUs. There are those that are internal and external to the home. And the externals can, take place in a existing building like a garage, or they can be constructed independently. Internal ADUs can either be, within the existing footprint of the principal dwelling, or it can be an add-on. So those are the primary forms in which they take place. There's a few different reasons for doing this. One, as I mentioned, the mother-in-law apartments, whether it's an urban area or not, they're prevalent pretty much everywhere. And so having an ordinance in place to regulate them and make sure they are a safe, habitable residence is important. They also have the opportunity to align, the elderly and the young together as a mutual benefit situation. Or, if we may start to see more and more of with our aging population. Homeowners may be looking for family to have a live-in situation, and this gives them that opportunity. Some people are looking to these as a way to offset their mortgages, and as I mentioned, this is contributing to the affordable housing.
Yeah, I've got a quick question.
Go ahead, Lyle.
So this comes from the state, correct, or is it a federal?
State, yes.
Yeah, so when you go get a loan, when you have an extra facility, you can't get it financed. Mm-hmm. I mean, so I wonder if that's ever going to come together.
That's the hard thing, and I think what we're seeing, in other communities that have already enacted their ordinances, it's not like everyone's lining up to get them built necessarily, right? They have to have a pretty compelling reason, or it is an investment, very much so. I mean, these don't come without an expense, right? So, I think
When somebody comes in to get a loan, they'll be able to get a loan on their home, but whatever the outbuilding is going to be considered a garage, the appraiser won't give it any value.
that's an interesting question.
Well, that's what
I'm not sure
happens.
about the valuation of them. Yeah, that's an interesting question on how they're handled. They
That's
may
how
not
they do
be.
it.
Is that
I
how
know
they do it?
They do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, that's a problem.
Yeah, yeah, certainly, certainly. Yeah, I think people would be entering this situation with the anticipation of the rent more than the investment then in that situation. So state requirements, as I mentioned, internal ADUs are a permitted use now. That's a mandate that's come down from the state. And with that, they have removed any restrictions on the size, lot size, street frontage, connectivity requirements that some municipalities once had in their ADU ordinances. Tremonton does not have one in place currently, so that doesn't necessarily apply. But there are still some factors that municipalities have control over. And so we examine those through our process to make sure that everything that we are proposing in this new ordinance meets state requirements, or falls within line with that. So since we began in May, we began with some research. We reviewed ADU ordinances from a whole bunch of different communities throughout the state to get a sense of what people are doing. And it was pretty interesting to see the differences. I think some of them are still needing to get compliant with what the state has handed down. But yeah, that was a good baseline for us to start with, as well as Sean and Steve Bench had also prepared a draft of their own, which we also used as sort of a baseline starting point. So with that research in mind, we developed a first draft in June. We took it to the Planning Commission as an agenda item, and it's been on their list for a few months now. We've kind of gone back and forth on some of the issues surrounding certain aspects of it and made several revisions. It's had a public hearing, and they've made the recommendation to forward it on to you. So that's where we're at today. So just a brief overview of what is in the ordinance, what it's composed of. We have divided, ADUs into two types, internal and detached. And part of that is how they're going to be handled administratively. So where internal ADUs are a permitted use under state requirements, the feeling of the Planning Commission was that it would be best to maintain the conditional use for the detached ADUs. There was some concern about because a detached ADU is not part of the main dwelling, that there may be situations in certain lots and certain conditions in the city in which some additional conditions might want to be applied to those. So that's why we decided to go ahead and separate those. Both types require a permit from the zoning administrator, and that application process is outlined in the ordinance. So, and if the zoning administrator feels that, like other conditional use permit situations, if they feel that they'd like it to go to a higher up body, they can forward it to the DRC or the Planning Commission. The internal ADUs, here's the list of essentially what's required overall. One per dwelling. It's subject to the zoning of the house. So all the setbacks and requirements that the house has for the zone apply to this since it's part of the house. They share the water and sewer. They have the same address, but with a Unit B. The owner has the option to make the electric gas optional if they choose. But, most importantly, we've got separate entrances for fire access. We're meeting building code requirements, things like that. Parking has been a topic of deliberation amongst the Planning Commission. We have it written in the ordinance such that there's one parking space requirement for a one bedroom and then two parking spaces for 2+ bedrooms. And those are required they cannot share the same driveway as the principal dwelling. So it has to be a driveway on the side of the home. The cars can be parked tandem in that side driveway, but they're not allowed to be tandem or share the driveway with the principal dwelling in any way.
What about street side parking?
Street parking is not allowed technically. Yeah. Now, in practice, I think we all know they're going to park on the street to some degree, right? So that was a point of discussion, and maybe that's some continuing discussion how to handle that situation. But we felt that, you know, without getting too prescriptive, this seemed like a balanced approach. Owner occupancy requirement, of course, and no impact fees for internal ADUs that do not change the footprint of the home. The detached ADUs have many of the same requirements as the internal. This section of the ordinance has a size range in which they're permitted, 300 square feet, and they're not to exceed 30% of the rear yard. So depending on the lot size you've got, that changes the size limitation. The setbacks are dependent on the residential zone, so we're treating them as an accessory building like we would any other garage or shed or anything like that. And so that similarly, that's where that 30% requirement of the yard space is coming from. And you know, I think I've already mentioned the other things about the conditional use permit. In this one, impact fees are required, and that has been a point of discussion. You know, maybe one of the barriers that could be removed to encourage the building of these would be to somehow waive that fee in the future. But as currently written, those are included. Just other administrative items surrounding this ordinance. There is an appeals process for the conditional use permitting. Included in the ordinance is modeled very similarly to other conditional use ordinances. We have a leave of absence requirement for the owner. Should someone want to take an extended leave from the home as an owner, they can come to the city and ask for a 24-month leave of absence, unless I think there is a provision that unless other arrangements have made, but that's the standard for anyone that would need an extended time away from the home. And then there's a section about revoking permits for noncompliance. So that's a general overview of where we are at with this ordinance in the draft as it's written. So turn it to you for discussion, questions?
Yeah, I'm, the impact fees got me a little bit concerned as well. I mean, you're putting in I understand there is some impact on the system, but it's not as much as a home.
Right.
And so it's the same impact fee as building a home?
No.
What we do for apartments and townhomes, they are 3/4 of a impact fee. So it's more or less 3/4 of the impact fee for the apartments. You know, usually they don't have the lawn that a regular home does. They usually are limited on the number of bathrooms inside. So that's why it's been reduced. And I could see that even being reduced a little bit further because it's more of a studio type. But that's how we've addressed, and in our impact fee schedule, that's how it's lined out for multifamily units.
How much is a impact fee for a house?
Probably for a total house, probably around 10,000, 12,000 because you got water, sewer, treatment, parks, police department, fire department, and storm drain. Is all that. So
I think if we want to encourage this kind of thing in the future, I think we ought to look at that 80. I think we ought to
what
look
we
at that a
did do,
little
me
bit.
and Sean discussed, and you've seen it in that first, instead of requiring separate water and sewer like you would for an apartment or townhome, as long as the property cannot be subdivided, they can operate off of a single meter and the same sewer connection. But if they have the possibility of subdividing, they'll have to have a separate meter and a separate sewer connection. And the sewer connection part is part of state law that they do. So we've kind of looked at that, trying to help make it more affordable. The impact fee, that's for something new, not really probably something that's already in place. But if they come in and build a new structure on the property for the impact fee. But that can be addressed in the impact fee schedule as we update it too.
Any other questions for Sam?
I'll make a comment. Having been in Planning Commission during this discussion, I will also say that the Planning Commission had concerns about safety services. So making sure, right, that the detached properties, that the safety, those individuals coming in, fire department, whatever, police department would be able to access that easily, that there would be a way made for that. That would be a consideration. And also, I think most of us know that as the legislative session begins in the coming months, parking is going to be a huge topic of conversation, and it might definitely cause us to look at this once again as we look at parking.
Yep.
But parking was probably one of the Planning Commission's major conversations as we discussed these ADUs.
Absolutely. On the emergency access piece, Sean did inform me that he spoke with the fire marshal, and they felt comfortable with the access that they would have as currently written.
Yeah.
That's encouraging. Yeah, the parking is definitely a bit of an interesting piece of this, and I think, as we may have said in the Planning Commission, as with any part of this ordinance, there's going to be a little bit of a learning piece to this. And, I don't think we're going to have it 100% right as rain on adoption. There will probably be something that raises itself, and that's an opportunity for a revision. But and whether that's legislatively driven or just driven by circumstance as the permits are coming in, I think that's going to be a time to revisit it.
Temperature of the Planning Commission, Connie, can you define how they felt about parking?
They felt like, well, as you know, if you just look at our streets, we have a lot of people, especially now, Paul can probably attest to this, that we have a lot of individuals, some families are living in the same home, right? And this would continue to be the case. But I think it's the parking on the street. And in our policy, or in the ADU that we've just addressed, it talks about off-street, off-street, off-street. And so that was one of the major concerns, is that it be off-street. So that was their temperature. That's how they felt, is that it needed to be off-street. And we even looked at where that parking maybe could be, as we look at that ADU, whether it be 300, 700, 800 feet, it could be parked off to the side, but of course we know the rule that it needs to be, not take up, 30% of that person's backyard or whatever. So we discussed where that parking would be, and of course, it talks about not utilizing, not being in the primary dwelling in their own parking out front of their home or in the middle of things. It needs to be their own parking.
Can they
So
share
could you
an
put it on
entry?
the front lawn of the house? You saying you could put the parking on the front lawn? of the house?
We didn't really discuss
It has
front
to
yard.
be. It has to be on a hard surface. It's
Yeah.
written as asphalt or concrete.
Yeah,
Well,
Defined as a
you
hard
could
surface.
concrete your front lawn.
You
and
could-
that
You
be
could.
your
You-
parking?
you could.
If it meets, if that is
Meets,
the other zoning requirements for the home, yeah. So
They share an entry.
for the home, or for the parking,
put an
You and a
attached.
home have the same entry, but
they're required to have a separate entry.
yuck.
Really, for families or for someone that this might be an affordable housing option. As we've chosen those 3 strategies that we're focusing on, this is one that might work really well for certain individuals.
Yep.
Now, on that entry, I don't know, I've seen one
let's
that
go
was
back to
built,
that.
they used the common entry, but you go into the entryway, then each facility
That's
had
right.
its own entry.
That's right.
Yeah.
has to
So
divide.
you go into a front door of an existing home, but they had built separate entrances into the actual living spaces. So you kind of have like an opening hallway, like you'll see a lot of apartments.
Sure.
Yeah. It doesn't.
So that's acceptable.
that is acceptable. Yep.
So one entry on a
So
driveway
one
is
main entry
acceptable.
into the whole facility, but each living space has their own entryway. One went down to the basement, one went into the existing.
I'm talking parking.
Oh, parking.
And so what I'm saying is,
Oh,
can you have
no,
one
you can have
entry?
you can have one entry.
Okay,
Yes,
and then you can
yes.
divide
As
into
long,
two.
yeah, as long as they
Yes.
can make the
Sorry.
turn.
Okay, that makes
Now,
sense.
now what we do have, Brett, is
Yeah.
Fremont, we have some unique parking requirements. If you look at how our ordinance, we have stalls that are a little wider and a little deeper than you might see in Logan. Instead of 9 by 15, we have 10 by 20. And the reason why is
Pickup trucks.
we drive big trucks around here.
Pickup trucks, yeah.
Drive down these apartments, and we do get some pushback when we get like Matheson Apartments coming in, and this is our parking, and they say, why? We'll say, well, you'll see a lot of people, they'll move in here, they'll have a truck, a pickup truck that's bigger than, that 9 foot stall really limits getting a pickup truck side by side by side by side, and especially on the length also. And so I'm sure that would fall into that parking. We would stick to our standard parking requirement, until everyone has an electric vehicle that's smaller. But we have a lot of big vehicles in Tremont. If you've ever been to Kent's, which you probably haven't noticed.
So really, as far as emergency access or anything like that, as long as you're meeting the setbacks, that'll never be a problem.
Right.
Shouldn't be a
Yeah,
problem.
exactly. Yep,
Yeah, because that's why the setbacks are there.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Any questions for us now?
No, I think I'm not sure how you want to proceed with this moving
Yeah,
forward.
so we have it
Sean.
on the new council business as item D for today to approve this ordinance. So, and if you have any questions for Sam, I know he doesn't live here in town, so I think this is his time to speak. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask him. If you have any concerns or anything he can clarify, now would be a good time because he's the resident expert along with Connie on this. So.
I think you condensed it very well,
Thank you. Okay.
so thank you.
I think, I'll look forward to seeing it move forward, hopefully, and
All right.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate you. And we have some other things down the road we need to be talking about. And so looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No judge yet.
I don't see the judge yet.
Oh, he planned to be here at 6. All right. How long do you need to do your,
Not too long, probably 10 or 15 minutes. Depends
okay.
on questions.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we just kind of switch it around a little bit? We go into closed session. Or I propose that we go into closed session.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session.
Second it?
Been proposed by Lyle and Vance and seconded by Connie. All in favor?
But I don't want to make the judge mad. Wait.
So we're gonna have to be careful here.
Is he coming?
Yeah,
Come down on us all.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because he sits where you